With finals and graduation coming up soon, students are feeling anxious about their future. Let me tell y'all, this is not an Earth-exclusive thing. Every single planet that I've been to that has an education system has students that are anxious about their future. And every planet that I've been to in the past couple of days has had students so weighed down with assignments and essays and work that I couldn't find a story to tell. Hey y'all, and welcome to Oblivion's Library. I'm Haley Straub, your local intergalactic traveler, exploring the galaxy, collecting stories. I know that students right now are nervous, so I wanted to tell y'all a story where life does indeed get better, and the tragedy and rebirth of a certain music artist from Planet Radio fit the bill. This story you're about to hear is one music artist's personal journey of finding his calling, and he tells it at all his concerts to inspire the youth of today. If you're not from Planet Radio, there's something you need to know about this planet before we jump in. They've got an interesting kind of science fiction technology. Everybody on Planet Radio can read minds, and they can read everyone else's minds too. This makes it a very noisy planet with no secrets. The people there can read minds through radio wave technology, which lets them think information to other people without ever using their mouths. Since they can communicate telepathically, nobody talks, and more importantly, nobody sings. This story is owned and copyrighted by Haley Straub. This story is not affiliated with Taylor University and may not necessarily reflect the views of the institution. All stories on this podcast are PG and LTC friendly. Today's story is called The Last Rockstar. And it starts with an 18-year-old boy named Cuver, who once again had talked back to his mom and was punished by walking around with duct tape over his mouth all day. "You're here to find a college," his mom thought as she put on lipstick, "so be asking around, thinking about your future. Like, look at this school here. They have a graphic novel about their college. You'll like those." Cuver rolled his eyes, scratching at the tape on his mouth. "Trying to reach the younger crowd, I guess. Comic books are so childish, Mom." Today was the day of the annual college fair, and college was the last thing Cuver wanted to think about during his senior year of high school. So instead of looking around and asking questions like his mom had told him to, Cuver walked around complaining and making trouble. He made sure to find something undesirable about every school present at the fair, and he pushed stacks of flyers off tables and stole merchandise, all while subconsciously texting on the phone in his pocket. And he made sure to ignore every college booth that had a cringy, childish comic book. "Hey, kid, want to play a game while I tell you about my college?" Cuver hadn't felt anyone's psyche in the near area. It took him a second to find the lanky younger man at the booth beside him. His table had a touchless video game console and a small TV. Cuver hesitated. "What kind of game, old man?" "Wait, you have Ultimate Battlefield? I dominated that game. I'll show you your place, old-timer." Touchless video games were played by the gamers simply thinking to the screen, using their psyche. Cuver sat down as the representative chugged a water bottle, started a new game, and made conversation as they battled on the screen. "So, what are you looking for in a college?" Cuver wasn't good at multitasking his psyche, and he had to stop controlling his character just to telepathically respond. "Well, for your information, old man, I don't want to go to college. High school was boring enough. Why would I want 4 more years of it?" The man laughed. "And for your information, Cuver Mindshatter, I'm not an old man, I'm 28. The name's Villaville. I teach psych studies at Sitges University." Cuver shrugged. "You must be good at it if you can communicate while video gaming and reading my mind at the same time." Cuver breaking focus made him lose the match. It was the worst part of his day, losing to someone older than him, and he silently swore as he got up to leave. "The move was hard on you, wasn't it, Cuver?" Professor Villaville's thoughts stopped Cuver in his tracks. "Moving before your senior year, all the people you knew gone, along with your dad, the only person who ever really knew you." Cuver got defensive. "Hey, get out of my head, old man." But Villaville continued thinking. "You don't see a point in college because you don't know what you're going to do afterwards. You're so focused on how other people perceive you, you don't even know how to perceive yourself. Why is that?" "Hey, I already know that. No need to think it out loud." Villaville's head tilted to the side. "The ROCKSTAR. Those old comic books you used to read about the ROCKSTAR. You don't want to admit you still love those. You love the idea of people cheering for you, but you can't be both popular and successful. Your mom wants you to grow up. You don't want to. Cuver felt like he'd been punched in the gut. He was frozen and confused, yet Villaville had just cleared up years of confusion all at once. How did you find all that in my head, old man? Villaville smirked. Well, I just read your mind. That is my job. Sorry about the random soul-searching there. I don't do that one very often, but I was curious about you. I can teach you how to do what I just did, and a lot more tricks, too, if you come to the college that I teach at. Cuver took Villaville's flyer with the words Seiches University printed on it. Yeah, I'll think about it. Don't think too hard. See, this is Providence. I knew coming to this fair was a good idea, even if the only reason was I met you. Good luck on the school searching. And hey, Cuver, you're a rock star in my book, buddy. A few weeks later, Cuver rolled up to Seiches University with backpack in hand. He was all moved in, his mom hugged him goodbye, he had his orientation schedule. He also had a back-to-school haircut that he absolutely hated. After hugging his mom goodbye, Cuver turned to his room, noticing the psyche of someone inside before he even stepped in. It turned out to be his roommate, a sophomore named Phylon. They hit it off pretty well. Phylon set down a crate of Cuver's books. Wait, what books are those? He thought. Cuver tried to shrug it off. Oh, they're nothing. Is that? Phylon picked up a comic book and happily flipped through it. It is ROCKSTAR, ROCKSTAR. I used to love these comics. And you've got the full set? That's awesome, dude. Cuver smiled, for the first time feeling pride over his obsession. So what do you read now, Phylon? Phylon shrugged. Honestly, I'm more of a movie guy. I don't read much that I haven't written myself. Oh, you're a writer? I mean, I want to be, thought Phylon. I'm a political science major, but I think I want to switch something to creative writing. What about you? Cuver sat down on his bare mattress and shrugged. I don't know, I'm undeclared. He thought about Villaville at the college fair. For now, at least. Cuver didn't meet Villaville again until his Intro to Psych class, 4 p.m. on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Professor Villaville was tall and lean with chaotic hair, and his school brand polo didn't make him any professional than he was supposed to be. He chatted with the students warmly as if he was one of them, until he stood at the front of the room. Good evening, y'all, let's settle down, he thought loudly to the entire class at once. I know, it's 4 o'clock, I know you're tired, you'll get used to it. Welcome to Intro to Psych Studies, whether you're here for your major or because it's a required class, I don't care, just be respectful and we'll all have fun. Cuver could already feel himself zoning out. Villaville continued to think to the class as he drank water from his thermos. So basically, the definition of psych is the energy that makes your brain run. It's how you process things, it's how you make memories, it's basically how you think. Communication through psych didn't become possible until the 22nd century with the invention of mind waves. First, it was connecting a person's mind to their phone so they could use it without touching it. The idea took off, and now, 100 years later, mind waves are everywhere. They're used to telepathically listen to music, use computers, drive cars, order food, even move objects. Everything from a thermostat to a light switch became touchless through the use of mind-connecting radio waves. But the mind waves became stronger and began to not only connect people's minds to electronics, but connect their minds to other people's minds. And here we are, 4 generations after the first recorded telepathic conversation, what the past saw as mind reading is our primary form of communication. Well, that's your brief history lesson. Now, for class, we're going to learn how to use the psych in your heads to help you with any future career you may take on. While Cuver's other classes were boring and he slacked off more than he wanted to admit, he respected Villaville and his strange psych abilities. Psych studies soon became Cuver's favorite class, and he told his mom this as they video chatted one night. You gotta keep up on your schoolwork, kiddo. You don't want to lose your good standing by being immature. You're 18. You can be an adult. I highly doubt that, Cuver replied. But deep down, the age-old saying applied. Mom was always right. His mom smiled through the phone screen. You found a college you enjoy, and I'm proud of you for that. So now you have to choose a major. Don't just waste all your time partying. Find something to settle down on. But that would imply that Cuver would have to put in effort, and he didn't like the sound of that, so he let the days go past, with his major undeclared. With time came October, and with October came Philon's birthday. Philon came up to his room with a huge flat box. "It's from my grandpa," Philon cried. "I love him. He always spoils me, sending me fun things my parents don't want me to have." Philon cut the tape and pushed open the box flaps. His jaw dropped as he lifted out a neon green electric guitar, complete with buttons along the neck and screens and strings on the body. "Cool guitar," Cuver noted. "It's not just any guitar, it's his guitar." Philon turned it over, too happy to think straight. Apparently it's got a psych and a cyclist function. Cyclist function? Cuver wondered. How do you make noise without mind waves? Philon laughed. "You know, maybe through sound?" He turned the guitar on and pressed the various keys, refamiliarizing himself with the notes. Then he played a little bit and sang a little rhyme. "Where'd that come from?" Cuver exclaimed. Philon was flustered, like he'd been caught. "Oh, that's just something I was writing down." He thought for a second, then he inched closer to Cuver. "Can I admit something? You gotta promise not to tell the other guys. I'm only a PPE major because my parents want me to be. But I figured out what I'm really passionate about. It's poetry." Cuver panted as he laughed inside his head. "Poetry? Seriously?" "I'm serious," Philon insisted. "The way words and syntax flow together, the rhythm and the beats, not just in poems, but in other writings, like laws and songs and essays. It's so fascinating. I love writing my own songs and poems." Cuver giggled. "Seeing you geek out over poetry is hilarious." But instead of mocking Philon more, Cuver decided to take a different approach. "Sing me that part again." He repeated it on his guitar, and eventually Cuver got a feeling for the words. Soon, Cuver was singing along. Philon paused. "Cuver, your singing psych is really great. You should be in the musicals or something. You're really good." Cuver shook his head. No. I am not returning to my middle school obsession. Back when I read those comic books and I wanted to be a rock star, until I realized that rock stars don't actually exist. AI-generated music is the thing right now with it being so cheap and easy, and there's just no market for singing. He saddened as he added, "Childhood dreams aren't realistic." December rolled around and people began to panic over finals. Anxiety was all over the airwaves, and everyone had at least something making their life miserable. Cuver, however, was on top of the world. He had decided on something, and this one decision had immediately filled him with joy. So he held on to that joy as he chatted with Villaville after a psych studies class one day. "I'm thinking of declaring a major," Cuver told him. "And I'm thinking to do psych studies. It's going to be so awkward. I've already told everyone I'm undeclared." "Hey, if you think something's the right thing for you, you can't be scared that someone else is going to judge you." Villaville smiled as he drank water. "And no, I'm not biased just because you're picking my area of study." Cuver thought it over as he studied that night. He was getting better at multitasking his psych and could now wirelessly listen to music and type while talking with Philon at the same time. It was this sort of thing that let him know he'd picked the right life path. And Cuver decided he liked having a major. He felt very grown up, like he was part of a unique group, even though he wouldn't meet more psych studies majors until next semester. He boiled over in his happiness as he strolled outside for a study break walk. It was like everything was finally going right. God was good, and Cuver might actually have a future. Maybe Mom did have useful advice. The real question was how to be focused and mature while still having fun. Cutting fun out of Cuver's life was an impossible statement. He was a college kid and he was going to milk it. Working while having fun was possible since Villaville lived it out literally every day. As Cuver headed through the student center to study for his finals, he passed his friends from his floor decorating a Christmas tree. They had the decorations and a ladder and were competing to see who could hang an ornament the highest. Cuver wanted to get a head start on studying, but when they called him over, he couldn't refuse a fun moment. Cuver wasn't extremely tall, so he used the ladder to his advantage. The tree his friends had chosen was the completely wrong type of tree for a Christmas tree, and it was abnormally decorated. They stretched the ornaments inches by inches upwards stepping higher and higher on the ladder to try to get it as high up as they could. But Cuver was determined to win this little competition of theirs. He grabbed the star and set his sights on the topmost branch of the tree. His floor mates cheered and commented as he climbed the ladder again and reached the star up toward the top branch, but it wasn't high enough, and Cuver could just imagine his mother scolding him as he stepped onto the very top rung of the ladder. He grabbed the tree branches to stay balanced and inched the star toward the top. But he was too far off balance, and the ladder gave way. Gravity seemed to tip over, taking Cuver with it. He fell through the branches full of ornaments, and while he wasn't that far from the ground, he hit his head. Bang! The world muffled. His fingers went numb as his head throbbed. He tried to breathe, but couldn't tell if he was breathing at all. "I'm okay," he thought to his friends. "I'm fine." He tried to sit up, but was caught off guard. Everything around him looked different. He didn't know if he was hallucinating, but all the screens in the student center were suddenly turned off. They were just plain white squares. His floor mates were surrounding him and staring at him, but they weren't saying his name. They were just silent. Everything was silent. His head was pounding, and for a second, Cuver wondered if he'd gone deaf. But he heard the squeak of their sneakers on the floor, the scraping of the ladder as they picked it up, the sounds of footsteps running around to see what the commotion was about. The otherwise silence was too much for him to bear. "Cuver!" A voice echoed through the room. Professor Villival pushed his way through the crowd. "Cuver, can you hear me? Listen to me, you're going to be okay." Cuver was not okay. Cuver was diagnosed with a bad concussion, and after sleeping it off, he expected to be able to hear normally, but the weird silence didn't go away. He seemed to be half deaf and half blind. He could see everything fine, but couldn't see screens, and couldn't hear videos, and couldn't hear people, but he could hear sound effects, and no one responded to anything he thought, as if they couldn't hear him. The only person that could hear him was Villival, and Cuver spent a lot of time in his classroom talking things over. "This is so weird," Cuver thought. "I don't know people are there until I physically see them, and I can't see any screens or phones." Villival glanced at him. "Oh, sorry, were you thinking something? I wasn't paying attention." Cuver sighed. "I just don't know what's wrong with me, and nobody will tell me." Villival drank some water and coughed a bit. "Well, I'll tell you. You fell off a ladder and hit your head. Good news is you don't have brain damage or anything major. Bad news, you lost your psych, your telepathy. It's gone. You can't hear anyone and they can't hear you. You can't see anything that uses mind waves to work, and I'm afraid it's permanent." "What?" Cuver leaned back in his chair, feeling the ground crumble out from beneath him. But to distract himself, he asked, "How come I can hear you, and you can hear me?" Villival laughed. "Anyone who's ever tried keeping secrets from me has never met me. I can find what anyone's thinking, even you. And as for how you can hear me, I'm talking to you the old-fashioned way, with my mouth. Your brains is damaged, but your ears work just fine. Talking's a hobby I picked up. It can really come in useful, but it does dry your throat out a lot." "But I can't talk," Cuver thought angrily, "and talking's ancient." Villival shrugged. "Well, when modern times fail us, all we can do is look to what's ancient." This little accident had thrown a wrench in Cuver's plans. Everything used psych to work nowadays. It was taken for granted. So much for a career in psych studies, he couldn't even participate in class anymore. Cuver's vision started to blur, and he pretended to itch his eyes to wipe away tears. It was so silent wherever Cuver went. Normally there was the chatter of mental conversations, and advertisements on the airwaves, and videos to watch on his phone. Those were all gone, and Cuver was left with footsteps, air conditioners, and the rumble of distant cars. "This is so boring," Cuver thought one day in his room. "Nothing against you, Phylon. You're just not interesting when I can't hear a word you're thinking." He scribbled, "There's nothing to do," in his notebook, and showed it to Phylon. Phylon read it, and in response, he tossed him a comic book. "Paper," Cuver realized as he flipped through the book. Paper pages. These books really are old-fashioned. Since he'd lost the ability to use a computer, Cuver got a medical excuse from his finals. It wasn't exactly the dream come true he'd wanted, and he was earnestly looking forward to going home for Christmas break. Since cars also used psych to drive, Villavelle had to drive Cuver home. Seeing the familiar landscape and neighborhoods was uplifting, even if they looked different without psych. It was nice to be away from school for a little bit. His house was the same, and Cuver nearly slipped on the snow as he climbed the front porch. His mom was already there. She was overjoyed that he was okay. "Mom, I was in an accident. I fell off a ladder and I—" He stopped when she was looking silently at him with pleading eyes. He wished she would scold him. She wished he would think anything. But the realization was like a knife in his heart. "It was because of me," he admitted. "I did this to myself. I was just being dumb." And he hugged his mom. They both started crying. One morning, a week later, Villavelle arrived for breakfast with an omelet and an offer. "There's a choir having a Christmas concert tonight. There's some really good singers. You want to come along and listen?" Although Cuver pointed out that patroning the arts was an old person activity, he decided he needed a night out. The concert was at the old Liberal Arts Center, one of the oldest buildings in the city, and one of the only buildings without an antenna on the roof providing radio waves, making telepathy almost impossible inside. But as Cuver found his seat, he was most surprised about the low chatter in the crowd. Chatter meant they were talking, and he enjoyed hearing other people talk. The choir itself was made up of about 50 members dressed in all black. They stood rigid, eyes fixed on the director, who took his time adjusting his music stand. The moment stretched out. He raised his hands, and they began to sing. Cuver barely noticed it at first, then identified which people were singing, trying to follow along. But the music multiplied over itself, splitting into harmonies, twisting and jumping around. It was the first time in a while Cuver had heard music, especially vocal music, so calm and moving. As he listened, Cuver realized that every song had something hidden inside it. The way the sound rose and lowered, was the music trying to tell him something? Philon had claimed something like that with poetry, and choral music wasn't too different from that. Maybe Philon wasn't crazy after all. Cuver didn't know the songs, but he caught Villavelle mouthing the words, and each one was sung so well. As the night faded into the last song, one woman broke formation, stepping into the spotlight. The choir began to sing behind her, and she broke out into a solo, somehow filling the huge room with sound much bigger than she was. Cuver could only watch in awe. He was sure Philon would recognize this poem. As the last notes bounced off the wall, they were replaced with cheers, the audience's standing ovation. The soloist curtsied low, beaming. The moment was shattered by the raising of the lights, and the applause gave way to cheerful chatter as the audience found their voices again. Cuver stood, but paused at the feeling of coldness on his face, and he wiped away a single stray tear. "Well, what'd you think?" Villavelle asked. But if the mind waves had been turned on, he would have known what Cuver thought. The only thing he could think, the only thing he thought all the way home. "I have got to learn to sing like that." Cuver's mom invited Villavelle over to their house for Christmas Eve dinner, and he asked if he could bring a guest. On Christmas Eve, Villavelle showed up with presents, followed by a lady in an orange dress, her arms stacked with pies. "So you're Cuver?" the lady asked out loud as she set the pies on the counter. "Nice to finally meet you. I'm Yevora. My brothers told me all about you." "You're his sister?" Cuver thought. "I learned to talk when I was around your age," Yevora interrupted him. Villavelle tossed Cuver a carton of whipped cream. "I figured you two could talk, or learn to talk at least. My sister Yevora here can't use her psych either." "Yep," Yevora scratched her hair. "An unfortunate side effect of a necessary surgery, but I've gotten used to it. I can't think, so I talk and I sing." "Sing?" Cuver put the pieces together. "Wait a minute. The concert last night. You were the soloist." "And he's figured it out." Villavelle smiled broadly. "His compliments." Yevora eyed him. Oh, really? Why doesn't he say so? On impulse, Cuver tried to ask a question out loud, but he tripped over his tongue and only coughed weird gibberish. Instead, he thought toward Villavelle. Ask her to teach me how to talk and to sing. I want to learn to sing. Villavelle passed on the message, and Yvora shrugged. Sure. Now that my concert series is done, I'll be moving in with my brother by your college, so I'll be there all semester. Singing we'll get to later. We'll start with consonants and vowel blends first. Cuver's spirits were lifted by the joys of Christmas, of the ham for dinner, the cookies to eat, and the presents to open. Villavelle gave him a water bottle, claiming that talking dried one's voice out very quickly. But he also gave Cuver something that looked like AirPods. They're called psychropods, he explained. They take psych and convert it to audio sound. You put them in your ears, it's like you can hear psych again. But others still can't hear you, and you can't wear these things all the time because they're too intense. But they helped Yvora get used to the silence, I remember. I would have gotten them for you earlier, but I had to find them online. They're impossible these days. But the best gift Cuver got that night was from his mom, a simple notebook, which Cuver immediately made use of, and began writing down words and trying to say them out loud. January came too soon, but Cuver was ready to get back. His brief major change to psych studies had been undone, and he was undeclared again. It was hard to get used to, but eventually Cuver normalized the quiet campus, the lack of electronics, and writing things down. Phylon was surprisingly chill about the whole situation, and even started copying Cuver's speech exercises. It wasn't that Cuver didn't know the English language, he just didn't know how to make the English language with his mouth. Phylon gave up on this front, but he did learn how to whisper, so they could communicate at least. The daily lessons with Yvora were embarrassing, but Cuver slowly began to improve. On good days, Yvora would give him singing lessons. Cuver liked those a lot more, although the solfege and circle of fifths were annoying to understand. Ever since his accident, Cuver refrained from the most crazy things. He couldn't even participate in most college recklessness, and he set a personal goal to serious up. I feel like people are watching me, Cuver said in his dorm one day. I know I can't hear them thinking about me, but they've gotta be. I see their eyes. In response, Phylon slammed a notebook shut. I'm done with this. Oh, your poem? Why? It doesn't make any sense, Phylon whispered in his forced voice. It should rhyme, but I can't make it rhyme. My writing is so bad compared to professionals. I hate writing. I've read enough. I know what good writing looks like, so why can't I make it good? Cuver chuckled. You hate it, and yet you're still obsessing over it. Here, let me see. Never thought you'd take me seriously. Never thought you'd look to me and call me out by name. Never thought I'd be the very first to see a world and call it fantasy, so smile when you think of me. That sounds fine to me. What's wrong with it? Phylon sat up straighter. He'd realized something about the cadence of the syllables of the text, but he was thinking about it, and Cuver couldn't catch what he was thinking. Something about no wonder it doesn't make sense. Poetry was meant to be said out loud. Poetry hasn't been improved upon for 300 years, Cuver pointed out. You have a passion from the past, Phylon. Were you expecting modern answers? Cuver wanted to point out that Phylon was geeking out, but remembered Phylon would never have gotten this far deep into writing if Cuver hadn't lost his psyche and showed him talking in the first place. The real question was whether that was a gift or a curse for the both of them. With his disconnection, Cuver didn't hear much about events in the school unless Phylon or Villavelle told him about it, so he was shocked to find paper posters hung up around the school. They were advertising the school's talent show, March 3rd, in the auditorium. Prize equals money. Simple enough. You should totally sing something. Show off your new talent, Yvora suggested one day in speech therapy. Professor Villavelle was hanging out with them for the day. There is this one song I've been thinking of, Cuver replied. Maybe Phylon will let me borrow his guitar. Villavelle stared at him. Phylon wrote the song you're going to sing, didn't he? Wait, how did you know? Villavelle smirked. That kid thinks he can keep secrets from me. Yvora was overjoyed. An original song. Wonderful. Hey, speaking of Phylon, Villavelle sat on his desk. Is he doing okay? I keep noticing he's really anxious. You wouldn't know this, but he has a lot of dark thoughts. You know what's going on with him?" Cuver shrugged. "How should I know what's going on inside his head? It's not like I can read his mind." "Oh, the best way of knowing someone isn't reading the mind, it's reading the body language," Villival corrected. "And Phylon's been closed off and fidgety lately. He's not normally like that." Cuver asked Phylon about it that night as they were figuring out chords to Phylon's song. Cuver had his psychopods in and was pressing and patching the guitar keys when he questioned Phylon's unhappy face. Phylon mentally replied that he didn't want to talk about it, so Cuver just left him alone. The night of the talent show, Cuver was ready. After a long debate with Yevora over whether he should wear fancy clothes or casual clothes, which Yevora eventually won, Cuver headed to the auditorium with Phylon's guitar. Last minute, Phylon had decided he didn't want to go after all. "And remember," he whispered, "don't tell anyone I wrote the song." Cuver kept his psychopods in as he warmed up and listened to the acts ahead of him. All of them were singing, playing, or performing something that required Psyche to enjoy. Eventually, it was his turn. Cuver took the stage on cue, but as he stared out at the dozens of eyes blinking at him, he didn't know how to feel. Cuver wanted to be mature, and his mature sense told him to play it cool and not be selfish. But he was finally on a stage, the center of attention, and rightfully so. He wanted to enjoy this, to soak it in. His fun side took over, and he danced a bit as he played the guitar and sang his song. Cuver shone on stage, embracing every word and note. There were goosebumps on his skin, and something inside Cuver was rejoicing. The words felt great in his mouth. It felt right. It felt real. Cuver struck the last chord, and the crowd clapped. Cuver paused on stage, putting his psychopods in his ears. The sounds of the world came to life around him, and the cheers of the audience finally reached him. They loved it. They were cheering for him. He smiled even brighter, gave a little bow, and confidently left the stage. Cuver won that talent show, and he won it in a landslide. That night, Yevora took him out for ice cream and called the whole night a win. "You have great stage presence. You sounded incredible. You were having so much fun up there." And Cuver kept replaying the feeling of being on stage over and over again in his mind for the rest of the day. It was such a small thing, but it was his thing, and he loved it. He wanted to do it again, and he began to seriously consider a career in singing. The next day, Cuver did the most logical thing and called his mom. Phylon dialed his phone, and Cuver could hear his mom's voice through the psychopods. He could tell his mom was only happy on the surface. "I'm happy for you, kiddo. Really, I am. But there's a problem with the money." Cuver shrugged. "I got $50 for winning. I don't think it's that bad." "Not that money, your tuition money," his mom admitted. "Cuver, we don't make enough to pay Cychess University tuition for next year. Unless you start racking up the scholarships, you might need to take a gap year and work." For being so reluctant to consider college, Cuver had embraced it. Talking with Villival, singing with Yevora, chilling with Phylon and the guys on his floor, he couldn't imagine where he'd be if he'd never had this. Losing his psyche was just a side effect. He was learning more about the world and about himself in the past year than in the past 18 years of his life combined. It suddenly became very, very real to him that he could lose all of this. Undeclared majors don't get the good scholarships, Cuver realized. And where am I supposed to work? I can't interact with any screens or technology. Unless I try a solo singing career, I don't know. I'll talk to Villival and Yevora tomorrow. He passed the message on to them before the next day's speech therapy. "I'm nervous," Cuver admitted. "What if it genuinely never gets better than this?" Villival drank some water. "I could talk with my department head, see if there's any scholarships we can get you." "Not likely." Cuver leaned back on the desk and rubbed his face. "Oh, why does this have to happen right now? I was having fun. It was going great. Maybe this is a training sesh for real life? All I got with me is a strange amount of singing talent. How can I use this to make money?" From her pensive corner, Yevora spoke up. I might know a way. It's a big leap, but if you're desperate, it might be your only chance. An old friend of mine from choir is hosting a singing competition for both voice and psych. The competition would be harsh, and there would be a huge audience, but the prize for winning first place is $50,000. Cuver gaped at her. That is a lot of money. I say we do it. I have nothing to lose. Should I just sing the song I sang at the talent show? I already know that one. Yevora shook her head. It's good, but it's not epic. Ask your composer friend to write you an epic pop song. Let's see what he comes up with. But when Cuver got back to his room that night, he heard crashing inside the room. Without going in, he put his psychropods in his ears, hearing Phylon's psych for the first time in a while. Through the wall, he could tell Phylon was making a phone call and was yelling through his telepathy. From what Cuver could gather, Phylon had finally hit the limit on political science and was chewing his parents out. I don't care about political science, and I don't care what you think. I'm not going to spend my entire life doing something I hate just to make you happy. There was a response on the phone that Cuver didn't catch. I love writing and poetry, and from now on I'm going to be doing that. Another response. How would you know? You never read anything I've written. You haven't even asked to. A response. You know, there's a reason I'm going to college so far away from you. A response. Wow, if it's my upbringing that got me this way, making such poor decisions, I wonder whose fault that is. Through the psychropods, Cuver heard Phylon's emotions. It had been a long time since he'd felt such waves of anxiety and insanity. How long had Phylon been harboring these feels? Cuver didn't want to intrude on whatever was happening here, so he left to eat dinner. And when he came back, Phylon was packing. I'm dropping out, Phylon revealed. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to move in with my grandpa, and maybe I'll be back next fall. I don't know. Cuver was heartbroken. Bro, you can just switch majors or something. You don't have to leave. You've got community here. But Phylon was beyond reasoning. It wasn't until Cuver was halfway through carrying stuff out to Phylon's car that he remembered. Phylon, I might be leaving too. Money stuff. I'm singing in a competition in a couple months, and if I don't win, my college journey is done. Your parents may not support your poetry, but I do. I need a song. Something that can get me the win and get you and me a lot of money. Phylon hesitated. Yeah, I've got one. He opened his economics binder and handed Cuver an essay. On the back of every page was lyrics and notes and phrases scribbled. The song is titled The Last ROCKSTAR. I wrote it to be a sort of theme song for the main characters from the comic books you like. Just change some of the words. I have no doubt you'll get the win. Phylon picked up his grandpa's guitar and hesitated, fingering the keys. Cuver, I want you to have this. You're going to use it a lot more than I do, so just keep using it. Use it for your little contest, I don't care. My grandpa won't mind, he's got a lot more guitars. Cuver was speechless and thanked Phylon, watching him drive away. The next few weeks were devoted to uncoding Phylon's song, figuring out what it was supposed to sound like and memorizing it. With his room all to himself, Cuver spent most of his time studying and practicing guitar alone. Yevora absolutely loved Phylon's latest song. Before Cuver realized it, it was May. Classes were starting to thin out, finals were looming, and Cuver just wanted the singing contest done with. Even without his telepathy, he could tell people were stressed, and became more and more stressed as the contest inched nearer and nearer on the calendar. The contest was held at the city's new Performing Arts Center, which had black box-style stages, LED walls, and the best technology everywhere. The rehearsal went well, and with an hour to showtime, Yevora fussed over him in the performers' green room. The place was completely silent except for them, the only two people that talked in the whole room. Maybe I should have gotten a haircut, Cuver wondered as Yevora touched up his stage makeup. He hadn't gotten a haircut since August, and his hair was several inches longer than he liked it. No, it's great. Girls go crazy for long hair. Yevora stood back to look at him. His outfit was mostly blue, his favorite color, and while part of him felt silly wearing it, he also thought it looked really cool. Yevora took a deep breath, and Cuver had to reassure himself that this was real. Everything led up to this moment, and he realized that if he knew a year ago that he would be here now, he never would have believed it. He tried to steady the nerves inside him. You've got this, Yevora assured him. You're a great singer and a great guitar player. Now go out there and do your best." When Cuver's number was called, he went backstage. The darkness was completely opposite of the stage, which was covered with neon and lights, more than he could possibly see. The few songs he heard before his turn were good, but Cuver was ready. His music track started, and the MC called his name. He ran onto the dark stage and played the beginning notes of his song, letting the microphones carry his voice over the room. Thousands of eyes were on him now. His heart was burning from the pressure, but he just smiled and let the pressure do its thing. And when the lights came up and the song began, he played his guitar and began to sing confidently. Time passed quickly as he sang his epic song, placing emphasis on every note and playing every chord perfectly. Cuver felt like he was made of light and energy and played off the cheering of the crowd. He struck the last chord and posed, hoping the mics weren't catching his panting breath. The crowd went wild with applause, and curiosity overcame him. Cuver put his psychopods in his ears, if only to hear the thunderous applause from the audience. Thousands of people, all cheering for him. Cuver was a rock star. He took a bow and confidently left the stage. Cuver went into summer break that year a grade smarter and $50,000 richer. He didn't even know what to do with all that money. But priority one was keep going to college. Cuver paid off his next semester, gave some of the money to Phylon, and began looking forward to the next school year. He kept singing. He kept playing the guitar and writing songs. Eventually, he started dreaming of a record deal, or a tour. Either way, Cuver knew his life was laid out before him. He could do anything, go anywhere, and he could succeed at anything he put his mind to and worked hard at. Over the next few years, Cuver's popularity grew, and so did Phylon's. They worked together, Phylon writing songs and Cuver performing them. Cuver became famous for being the only artist on the market that sang with his mouth, not with his mind. His career took off, and Cuver's life was a success. And he became known as the last real singer of the era, Cuver Mindshatter, the last rock star. That is the last rock star. There we go. I saved the best for last, so let me know what you think about it. This story was my pet project my last semester of high school. Senior year, spring semester, I had a bad case of senioritis, and so to pass time in class, I wrote out the story, The Last Rockstar, in a notebook during class. In the original story, Cuver was a senior in high school, like me when I wrote it, who went through the process of finding a college and earning a scholarship. I decided to change Cuver from being in high school to being a college freshman to fit this podcast because my audience is mostly college students. This story was inspired by superhero high schools such as My Hero Academia and X-Men, and I came to a realization. If mankind was going to evolve superpowers in the future, wouldn't it make sense that everyone gets the same superpower at once? I decided to go with mind reading. I realized that a society full of mind readers would be very different from real life, and that was the basis for The Last Rockstar. The story's theme is growing up and making good decisions, and when Cuver slacks off and fails and faces the consequences, and when he locks in and works hard, he succeeds. The story starts out at a college fair, where Cuver has duct tape over his mouth due to mouthing off at his mom. The fact that his mouth is covered and yet he's still communicating fine tells us how this world works with the telepathy. Cuver thinks that comic books are childish, even though he actually likes them, because he's denying himself to be cool. He runs into Professor Villival, who plays a touchless video game and reads Cuver's mind to reveal his vulnerabilities. Professor Villival was meant to be the chilled teacher who acts more like his students than an actual teacher, and he was modeled after Gojo from the anime Jujutsu Kaisen. Villival is also really good at reading minds, as he can read thoughts deeper than what people are thinking on the surface. And this isn't because of any superpowers, he's just naturally really good at using mind waves like that. And this lets him be a professor at this college without having gone to college himself. Villival does not have a degree in anything. He's not a real professor, so I don't know how he got on staff at SciChess, but he's just so naturally gifted that he can do that, and he acts like a teenager while being in his late 20s. Before going to Saichas University, Cuver gets a back-to-school haircut to show a big change in life. He never gets another haircut through the entire year, so his hair is long by the time the singing contest comes around in May. So next in the story, we meet Cuver's roommate Phylon. Phylon is being forced by his parents to be a political science major when he really wants to be a writer/poet. While Cuver doesn't know what he wants to be in life, Phylon does know what he wants to be in life, but he can't pursue it. And when Phylon sees Cuver's childish comic books, he calls them cool and doesn't make fun of them. Cuver goes to his Intro to Psych Studies class, and there Villavelle gives an info dump on the history of this world and how the mind reading works. Once again, I've said before on this podcast, info dumping like this in stories is important to know background, but people don't just say things that are already common sense, so you need a good excuse to say stuff like that. And Villavelle teaching a class is a perfect example to do this. For Phylon's birthday, he gets a guitar from his grandpa. Phylon has a really strong relationship with his grandpa, and the story was supposed to focus on that relationship more, but had to get cut for time. The guitar is kind of old-fashioned in this world. It can play through radio waves and telepathy, and it can play through sound waves without telepathy, regular sound, foreshadowing how Cuver will eventually use both modes throughout the story. Cuver and Phylon bond over how their passions, poetry and singing, are dying industries in this society, and they can't do their passion professionally. The midpoint of the story happens during the midpoint of the school year, right before Christmas break. Cuver tries to be cool and get attention by putting the star at the top of the Christmas tree, but his ego ends up being his downfall, literally. He trips, hits his head, and loses the ability to communicate telepathically. It's cruel irony, because as soon as Cuver declares a major, he physically can't do that major anymore. Because he can't communicate using radio waves anymore, he can't see or hear anything that uses them. But he can hear and see normally still, and Villavelle can communicate with him that way, because Villavelle picked up talking as a hobby. The only thing constant in Cuver's life are his comic books, because they're made of paper which he can see. Villavelle re-kicks off the story by telling Cuver about a Christmas concert. Typically, when I write stories, they have an inciting incident at the beginning, something that happens that kickstarts the story's action. And this story in particular follows a different format than I usually do. I've heard of other people that use this format before, but not really me. This story has two inciting incidents. The college fair in the first scene is the first inciting incident, but this Christmas concert is the second inciting incident, kicking off Cuver's new goal and his new chapter of life. This Christmas concert was to show that I believe even in the far future, fine arts will never truly go away. Also, this was part of Villavelle's plan, to show Cuver that there's more to life even with his disability. This concert was because I did choir in high school, and the Christmas concerts were always my favorite parts of the year. Yvora makes an entrance before we meet her as a character, as a soloist in the choir. Making an impact like this will tell us she's going to be important later. Yvora lost her sight due to a surgery, and for the spring semester, she teaches Cuver how to talk and sing. Cuver, being used to reading minds, is really bad at reading body language, and he doesn't realize Phylon is crashing out. Phylon is going insane from schoolwork that he hates and doesn't want to do. He puts more effort into writing songs for Cuver than doing his homework. Cuver performs and wins the school talent show, reinvigorating his passion for singing and performing, and this encourages him to go for the big singing competition at the end of the year. But the crisis of the story hits first. Cuver is short on college money, and Phylon drops out due to mental health. But Phylon has a song ready for Cuver to sing called The Last ROCKSTAR. Fun fact, I actually have written this song. The lyrics and the notes are there. I wanted to get this song recorded for this podcast so I could play it, but unfortunately I ran out of time and the recording does not exist yet. If I eventually turn this story into a movie, I have that song that he sings already written now. Most of the songs, actually, in the album that would be this movie, I already have written out, mostly left over from high school. So Phylon leaves the school, but gives Cuver his grandpa's guitar because he knows Cuver will use it to accomplish his dreams where Phylon cannot. The singing competition for $50,000 is the story's climax. Normally, a climax involves a showdown between the good and evil forces in the story, but The Last Rockstar is unique in that it doesn't have a villain. The only villain here is Cuber's own stupidity. Since he's matured in his first year of college, he wins. He overcomes his own stupidity. That's the villain here. The resolution of the story is a brief description of how Cuber went on to become famous, and it all started right here. Cuber figured it out. His life was so much better than he ever thought possible. My senior year of high school, I already knew I was going to Taylor University, and I knew what I was going to major in, but I noticed that some of my fellow classmates did not know what they were going to do. I wrote the story to be a kind of manual for how one finds a life purpose and a college, and how God is ultimately in control, and He will find the best situation for you. The story here has obviously changed a lot since 2 years ago, and I didn't have enough time this week to make the story all that it could be, but it's still one of my favorite stories. I saved the best for last. Yes, you heard that right, the last. This has been the last episode of Oblivion's Library. It's time for me to leave the library and come home to Earth. I have enjoyed every second of this podcast. I don't currently have plans to do another show next semester. Potentially, I could rerun recordings of this podcast again, so let me know if that would be something you would like. I hope you all enjoyed, or at least put up with the stories that I've told. You can listen to all my story recordings on the Oblivion's Library YouTube and Wattpad, and check out the Oblivion's Library Instagram for art and character designs. And just because my podcast is done does not mean you can't tune in still. Check out Taylor University's WTUR Radio 24/7 for epic music, and try some more student-led podcasts, which will be starting next semester. And so, for the last time, this is Oblivion's Library, signing off. Take care, y'all.